So, Dr. David Lloyd, you're a GP in Harrow and you run a walk-in service there.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming to talk to us. Can you tell me how you understand the idea of supply-induced demand?
Yes, I think so. We work within the NHS, and the NHS is a service that is rationed, and so supply-induced demand is what happens when you open up a new service, I guess. And one of the things that we've discovered is, yes, you open up a new service and surprise, surprise, we get busier and busier and busier year in, year out. So I think that's what we understand by supply-induced demand, whether it's good demand or bad demand, I guess.
In your experience, how do you think the balance falls between people who attend with rather minor illnesses that perhaps they could look after themselves or go to a chemist or something like that, and those who attend with perhaps more serious problems?
I think I must declare my London bias here, because I work in the second most ethnically diverse borough in the country. And so many of the patients who come and see me don't really have any choice except having a face-to-face with a doctor in a walk-in centre. They can't make appointments over the phone, they can't talk to 111. So I am very biased, and the data that I work on is obviously based on that. But I think that we've got the splits just about right. The key point that I wanted to get over today at your fantastic meeting was that you need to have a system where you can treat complex patients with the time and the energy they need, and have a system for dealing with the minor problems, which is geared for that. At the moment in general practice, you're a jack of all trades. You spend most of your life seeing chronic illness, and then these rather annoying patients with snotty noses or coughs and colds sort of force themselves in on what you think is your real day job. So let's do it. Let's split that. Let's have 15-minute, 20-minute appointments for patients with complex patients. Let's have continuity of care there. And the patients that need the one-off problem dealt with get seen in a walk-in centre that's part of the whole system. So there's this big emphasis on splitting systems at the moment. My solution to the problem is to merge it all together. So you have a walk-in centre run by a group of GPs who are in a network, who deal with complexity and continuity the right way and filter out the stuff that needs to be seen quickly and urgently.
And do you have some people that come back repeatedly to your walk-in centre with the same problem, or do you tend to steer them back towards their own registered GP?
I think that's one of the other areas that was of tremendous interest today, is just how much you can educate people to use services in what you think is the right way. And I don't think there is a right way myself. I don't see why patients with feverish children shouldn't come back and see me time after time when they have a fever. I don't mind seeing that. And they get used to me and I get used to them, and I deal with them very quickly and cheaply. It's the patients with complex problems that really should stick to one care provider.
So during the seminar today, you suggested that actually the distinction between walk-in centres, urgent care centres, registered general practice, 111 was all a bit complicated. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yes, I think so. I think that the problem that the health service has by having multiple budgets and multiple providers is these perverse incentives. Footfall into A&E generates money for the hospital. Footfall into other parts of the service generate money there. But there is if we only had one budget and we managed it all, then by a process of emergent strategies, if you like, you'll get a local solution which will include walk-in centres, include dealing with unscheduled patients, include dealing with complex patients, and no perverse incentives to ship one person into the system from another. At the moment, if I see a very difficult patient, it's the easiest thing in the world for me to send it off to hospital. Doesn't cost me a penny. Arrives in the hospital and they say, whoopee, that's a lovely complex patient, that's loads of money for me. Whereas if we had one budget, we would have all the money to spend on that complex patient in the right place.
And you mentioned there in your answer the idea of localness and the local context perhaps shaping what you do. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. As I said, I'm dealing in a very multi-ethnic area where language is a real issue. And so I need to have a walk-in component of the offer I give to patients, because that's the only way that they can deal with it. They also, we deal with a lot of patients who are unused to primary care. They're used to going to a hospital first as well. So we need to incorporate the front end of A&E into our offer in primary care in Harrow, which is where I work, because a lot of patients will use A&E as their primary care as well. So we need to do it that way. But if I'm working in Bournemouth or Surrey, then patients are well educated, they all speak English, and they will know that they can, if they call first, they'll get an appropriate response on the telephone, or better still, they can email their doctor, and they might never need to see their patient ever. So there will be different ways of dealing with things for different parts of the country, but it has to be local.
Dr. David Lloyd, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Dr. Rosen.